Alright, so today we are doing an interview with Mr. Dick Scott here, who is 101 years old. You've had a very extensive career and very, I would say, an eventful life. So we're just going to be getting right into it here. So, Walter Ernst, do you want to start the questions here?
Well, I guess I've just thought of a few things. I'm open to. I want to hear all of it, basically.
Well, I don't know what all of it's recorded here and there, and the pictures to go with it. That was, I could practice doing my own biography as I created it, yeah. And that's what this book is.
Okay.
And my sister, who's the first author, but really the co-author, I did more of it because it's more about me, and I had more chance to write and photograph than she wasn't doing photography, so I had more to go there. But we put it together, and a great deal of help with this young lady who could write too. And so it's a pretty good book, I've been told. And if you're interested in this kind of stuff. And there were many people, the Army learned about photography in World War II. I still think there was a camera equipment or anything to do World War I. And at any rate, I was at DePaul in college when my draft time came up, and then they shipped me off on a train and I got rooted out of my bedroom there. I already told you that. And went off to a boot camp in Georgia, a training place for draftees, where their first dose of the Army was a big, I guess about 4,000 or 5,000 people at a big camp in coastal Georgia, and so I was sent there too. And there were 3 or 4 of us, and so we were a separate little bunch of people they didn't know what to do with in basic there, and so I had weird experiences. Although they got us up to go march and shoot in the middle of the night and all the kind of nonsense that Army thinks is war, if he does. And then I got sent off for an advanced course in some of the finer points at Yale. They had a photo department in connection with geology, and I was, if I had a major, I was a geology major from the beginning in this. And my first college was DePaul. I got they used to give a scholarship, as they called it, in for a 4-year undergraduate thing at DePaul to the one person they picked out of the graduating class in each high school in Indiana. So there were a whole bunch of country rich Hoosiers dropping in with the fraternity boys at the beginning of every year.
Yeah.
More fraternity boys and other. Anyway, I was up at DePaul there, and then I got switched to do the more intensive podium thing in Indiana, so I never did get my bachelor's at DePaul. No problem. I was not yearning to be in a fraternity anyway.
Yeah.
It was a pretty wild bunch up there then. There was lots of drinking went on and so on. And, but that still happens, I presume, in fraternity.
Yeah.
I never got back to a fraternity, does it? Well, at any rate, then the next stage, and this is one little thing I want to mention might interest you, and one experience, with this same base in Georgia where they sent me to see what the Army was doing with guns and get familiar myself. There were, I don't know how many, just a small group of the trainees but one thing they did there was to train fighter pilots. This was part of the integration of Negroes into the Army and the Air Force, and they flew what were the fighter P-40? I can't remember.
P-51?
Single-seater fighter of the World War age. My memory is going. But, and so they got them equipped with cameras, and we flew a lot of flights over the channel, repelling the British fighters coming to shoot up London. And we didn't do head-on combat with them once in a while, but usually it was something. Anyway, I flew a lot of flights over the area of war in the co-pilot seat in a P-47 with experienced pilots who were back as the training leaders for the training camp. And so I got a lot of experience flying. And one of the things they did as a part of the training exercise was that we flew out over the ocean where the camp was there, and the coastal South Carolina then and now I guess was full of summer houses for the people who lived around there or didn't live there or owned houses to come swim in the summertime. And so there were people living with cars and driveways and so on. And part of the game, these veteran combat pilots were bored people doing what they were doing, and so they figured out to have some excitement. And the game that got played was to get out over the ocean, and the co-pilots and photographers or trainees could be riding along with this stuff in the co-pilot seat. There were 2 seats in the twin-engine P-47 fighter of its day, and the game was get out over the ocean, get down over the ocean, pick out your house and its long driveway, get down your choice about how close to the water, and you fly in, come to the dwelling, fly the driveway, and a guy who could get closest to the garage before he had to pull up and skip the garage with his undercarriage, which was the game of who could do it the closest. And I flew some of those flights. This is not that I was brave or stupid or both, maybe I was both, but the kinds of trainees that people in different vocations in the military varied according to what you were going to do later. They were going to do close combat flying and had done a lot of it. That's why they could do this, and nobody ever crashed one, and they weren't really parking the airplanes in the garage, but it looked like it just came up to the door, you know.
Wow.
And so I got a lot of experience, and then after I learned everything I was supposed to know, I got assigned as the, I don't know what they called me, something about the photographic officer, I guess, at an Air Force base in New England. I don't even know where I've been so many places. And there they had bigger airplanes. They were running bomber runs and bombing with 4-cylinder planes, the big stuff. And they carried bomb loads over the target. The bombers released the bombs, and we took pictures of what happened. That was to record the messages.
Were those planes the B-17s? Do you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I rode in a B-17 once, actually, a few years ago.
Me too.
Yeah, they're big planes.
They're
loud.
4-cylinder big plane.
Oh yeah.
Pretty cumbersome and not entirely reliable all the time.
Yeah.
But it was, I can't, this is not true, but it isn't meant in a joking way, but it wasn't fun, but it was exciting, you know. I enjoyed doing it because it broke the monotony, you know.
Yeah.
But those pilots were good. That we never lost a plane in that, or the pilots never lost lost a plane or a pilot in that. And then I went on, they hauled me up the line in a train. No more actresses to swap beds with on the trip to New Haven, but it was that put the Yale and put a photo section for military in the Yale curriculum, and a small hand. Well, they didn't have a million pilots in the Air Force, but this is where they trained the beginners, and I was one of those. It was a year, I guess, the curriculum they gave us. And we had our own section in one of the dormitories there. We photographers were a kind of a catered to monopoly of students, and we weren't gunners, we were photographers. We had well, I have one picture of myself carrying my camera because in uniform across the Yale campus, this kind of nonsense we did.
Yeah.
And then once you got done with that, you went on to a base, and you did a little bit of everything. The recruits of pilots, new pilots, people becoming pilots all came through and got the photo side, and the interpretation then of photographs from the combat flying that the real Air Force did a lot of time, and some of the dogfights and that kind of stuff. They had wing-mounted cameras that operated by the pilots beside the stick. They controlled the camera and shot what they want to of what they did as they did it. So there was a lot of literacy film, and we compiled records for teaching to other classes. They published little booklets where you advise or advance from this side or that, how low to get through, the stuff you teach to have people gunning for each other. But then after the war settled out, we got sent to various bases. I've been stationed all over the country and out of the country a lot. But meanwhile, I went back to DePaul, where I'd studied a bunch of geology and major geology there, and got some training and did some flying with the Air Force training and that stuff, and they ended up at one of a series of Air Force bases in the country, and they had a big base in Alaska. I was up there a while flying the pilots. I don't know whether I have any Alaska stuff, but they're just reefing through it, and you hit. But there's both family and experience. In this book, it's not something you can do or would want to do very long. It was just for my family, and I like to think I could write, so I get my kid sister who can write really helped a lot with this. And taught me a lot. Made her first author for the record. But that's how I got into aviation, just through geology. I could make some sense of some of the pictures they took of this and that.
Oh, yeah.
And we discovered some new geology features. And I went back after the war and spent some years with the Geological Survey up there, doing mapping of new formations, and I did a lot of field work, some by myself, up in northern Alaska, where it was wild and full of bear and things like that. I spent some time soaring across the drainage at the bottom of a river cut out. The bear was looking about whether I looked like breakfast if he came across the river, and I was looking like how I could avoid being breakfast if he came across the river. It was a lot of fun in retrospect. It wasn't as much fun when I did it. But I had the point of all this is, I'm not bragging about this, but my military experience was a completely different thing than people talk about in being training and doing it in the Army, because it led, as it led later on in a professional career in geology, to doing different kinds of studies in this different company. Here's one example, and I won't bore you to death. The British Museum, which has a lot of coastline, it's an island, and they did a lot of marine geology with the formations that were being eroded at the intersection with the oceans up there. And one of them turned up an occurrence up over a plant in the form of preserved seeds that nobody'd seen before, and nobody knew how old these things were. And two Britishers, one British count with, I don't know what his rank in the peerage of notable ceremony, but he was a geologist and had started on that, got married, got his wife interested, and they spent a lot of his active life until he died as an officer, but the nobles did what they would with the military, and he started working on this occurrence of newfound seeds of a different sort never seen before. His wife got interested, and she was his right hand. I don't know how far in it they were, but she died, so they had a disease or something, didn't matter. And meanwhile, she'd acquired a field assistant, another young woman, a geology student who worked with her collecting and all that sort of thing. And the two ladies went up to the coast and rented a little cottage along the beach, and they spent their lives collecting and working on identifying and doing good science. She was good by then, and her recruit young lady was also very good by 40 or 50 years later with this test. They spent their lives together. Actually, the culprit was government. They formed a team, and they published, I've got it in a box here, I can't get it out and show you, but the biggest treatise you ever saw on the formation and the geology and the currents and so on of one particular British formation, which was a time record in the geologic record. It was called the London Clay Formation, and they published a book about literally that thick and almost as big as this cloth on the London flora. And the photographer published it together. Miss Chandler died, or Mrs. Reed died before it was over. Miss Chandler, who was the lifetime companion after she grew past being the field assistant and student, and she spent her life, the two ladies lived together, spent their lives together. And I went up there when the older lady, the royalty, was not able to go out to the field anymore, but they were still collecting the different codes and so on and the hood. And my weekends went with going out with the collector and making collections there. And I did some publications on a few things and got a very wide different experience of well, what geology was, because you were just picking up pretty rocks. Mm-hmm. They fit into an evolutionary series of the changes in plants, if you could figure out what it was. And I spent several summers then I worked at the British Museum in their collections otherwise, so I spent a year in England. And actually, her mother came to England long before Sue was even on the way or even thought of. And we got married in London and lived there until that phase was over. Came back, isn't that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, okay. So, as I say, I didn't have the normal military life.
Yeah.
Is the point that is boring you with all this stuff.
This is
Then
fascinating.
Came back and had been at different universities. I went back to Indiana and taught there a while, and a couple of other places.
Where did you teach at?
Well, I taught at Indiana at the university.
Okay, yeah.
You taught at Harvard, Dad. Harvard.
Yeah, I taught. This was. I didn't have my PhD yet, but a bunch of military recruits or draftees that had some of the same kind of background of mine before they got picked up by the Army and were going on with geology, and a lot of them wanted to be doctors for some reason. And a lot of doctors of that era were draftees and were forced into something because of everybody else was who could hold a gun. And at the time I was teaching there, and working on my doctorate, they had a whole bunch of students. The incoming class the year I got stuck with this, and I'm not the writing experience, was a year that I had just finished, and so they invited me to be a professor, even though I didn't have my degree quite yet, to teach this class about the stuff that I had been working on. They wanted, and everybody wanted them to know about, go to places where the knowledge could be fitted in. So I was a Harvard professor before I got my doctorate and taught for a year. And they were suspicious enough of me, and this is precaution, they do it to everybody, I guess. But for the first semester of the course, they had an experienced staff professor at Harvard sit in the back of the booth and go to every lecture I teach. So they made a pretty good teacher out of me, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't, the boss do it. And so I'm not bragging about anything, it's just that the kind of educational and military and emotional too experience I had with the war and with my introduction and initial practice in my kind of science was different and in many ways better, broader, different. And I've gone out. I was back in Alaska after I stayed on it with the survey and went to Alaska and did some work. They were doing field work up there. A lot of oil was found in Alaska, and people were digging for it. And I didn't like the camping approach, and I did a lot of field work in Alaska with alone, just here or there, where I was interested, and usually at least one other person with me, but sometimes alone. And I know there are a lot of deep valleys where drainage goes down to the sea along the North Alaskan coast, and the native bears, and there were lots of native bears, patrolled those for other animals who were hunting the ground squirrels and things they could eat, maybe, or whatever, as we all know. And you'd get down one side of a valley and camped over there, and when you looked up, you're going home, and over there's 2 or 3 polar bears. And we'd stare and look at each other for 2 or 3 hours, say, who'd give in and get the hell out of there so I could go home, you know. And these are camp experiences and being out alone a lot. The survey normally didn't train their people with isolation. They did in some specialties. There was nothing rare or unusual or wrong about this. It's just this is the way you need to learn a certain thing, is you get out and try it. there weren't a lot of experts at it to send them on. They had them busy interpreting aerial photograph for bomber runs at the same time and improving them as we went along. Anyway, that was my military career, and how I became an officer almost instantly once I finished the last course after teaching under pre-medicated case myself with a professor riding steer up in the back of the room. I say I've had a weird record that way, but I came back and then I got interested in collecting a lot of material, special material, and I've been at different universities and so on, and to preserve this stuff I got interested in starting museums as a place, and even little places. What's a little town?
Morrison?
Yeah, Morrison.
Colorado.
Okay.
I had a staff of about 10 bright, knowledgeable, interested women working as the staff of that little museum, the town back doing this sort of thing, and I got a little grant, and we put together quite a respectable little small-town museum. I did that 3 times in different cities and universities, and never made any money. I was hanging on to. So she's so small, she's never got enough to eat, right? Anyway, that's sort of I didn't make any fantastic discoveries that changed the composition of peanut butter or anything like that. But we learned a lot and added to the scientific record. Nothing like the little one in Flora book with the 2 ladies did, but I published quite a bit. And I don't know where all I ended up.
Hey, Dad, what about your time in Japan in the military? Training racehorses? Japan, you were in Japan.
Yeah, like what's this picture?
And Uncle Dan was in Japan too?
Yeah, he got assigned to one of the fire squadrons over there. He was a pilot, a U.S. pilot, thank God. And we got together, as that picture shows, quite occasionally. He'd come spend a weekend at where I was stationed, which was only 3 miles away. We got together, we were better friends, not only ever heard our whole life, because he is pretty dominant sort of character, isn't he? Anyway, what I'm saying is I had a life in the military that there's almost no parallel, or it is so far from the standard that it's ridiculous, you know.
Yeah.
And yet it was good.
Do you remember what you did in Japan? Where were you stationed in Japan?
Yeah, I bought a house in Japan. What was the town?
No, Japan in the military. And you had a commander who made you train racehorses so the nurses would come out and visit the pretty horses? Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. A lot of these
It's in the book.
Okay. They pursued were more, especially if I had something else to do then. but it was different. And there was a lot of boat trips by the oceanographic people. They were exploring from boat some of the intersections of coast and the ocean, how the rates of erosion and where they could have gun stations. And so, you know, the military use, they weren't doing science, they were doing kill where they could of Japanese, hopefully. And because the Japs were defending their coast. getting all this down. What are you going to do with it? Throw it away? Good.
Oh, this videotape is going to be preserved forever.
Yeah.
Well, do I get a copy?
Yeah, everybody wants a copy, yeah.
Maybe then I'll remember enough to make it interesting, but my memory is fading. I don't know who I am anymore. Don't care much. It doesn't matter. Kids are growing, so I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
And
So, you're 101 years old. Over the course of your life, what piece of technology do you think has been the most world-changing?
oh, the camera, I'll get it.
Camera? And why do you think that is?
Well, because the fads of colonial times, for example, the holiday dinner, big feast ceremonies, and the church services that were particular to that kind of culture, always a part of keeping the fire going in the church is a part of the cultural thing. You know, the kind of detail that's necessary to operate in the raw condition, and the kind of attitude and caring and concern with many aspects of the environment of the time, both the religious and the social. Those were entirely different. My grandparents did not live like you and I do now. I mean, and just in having the customers and the variety observing of a special holiday isn't seeing who's got the fattest turkey to sacrifice, but it's who has a car with enough mileage to drive 200 miles to go to dinner. It's a totally different world, and it creates different attitudes and carries with it, I think, different values in doing what you do. What gets values? Well, it's not a pen of turkeys, it's how do your forward is to carry out the social part of being who you are in time and circumstance. I'm blathering here.
So it's the car you're talking about.
What?
The car is the transformative
well,
technology.
Two stages.
Or the camera.
I settled, my parents grew up in a little town called the Grange, about 10 miles from the Michigan line to the north. And my father was a beekeeper. He's right there.
Okay, yeah.
And I went back and settled Lorraine's at first. I didn't settle, but I lived there quite a while actually, and then in Fort Wayne, and another nearby town. Fort Wayne and Elkhart were the coastal towns in northern Indiana. But and then I eventually, well, not too long, I graduated to universities and so on, because I do one thing one place and somebody likes it, and they hired me to come over and do it for them, and I did 3 or 4 of those. I did one where.
Are you talking about your factory jobs when you were a young man?
Well, no, I was talking about these little museums like Campbell's.
Oh, well, that was in Colorado, Dad.
Well,
but
so,
you know what you did for your dad in beekeeping is pretty interesting. They might be interested in that.
Tell them, what did I do besides?
You helped your dad.
Oh, well, yeah, I learned to be.
Move bees all over Ohio and Illinois and.
Yeah, the climate changes were such between northern Indiana, and we lived, and he had his acre. He had at maximum he had about 500 colonies of bees.
Wow.
And he produced in the can with all the extracting and labor that went with getting them away from the bees, the honey away from the bees. He produced 100,000 pounds of honey one year with 500 colonies of bees. And in the northern Indiana climate, those all had to be put to bed and packed in planer shavings against the winter. So in the fall we would put little wrappings of tar paper around the pair of colonies on a frame, and then put tar paper around it, and then put planer shavings in and put their covers back on top. And we had to do that to every bee yard every fall, and then we had to go around and take it off in the spring and so on. But he did that as long as he lived, really. He sold his size away as he got older and ended up with just some bees and clumps in the back 3 acres of the house we lived in up in LaGrange. I grew up in LaGrange, and you probably never even heard the word for a city, or it isn't a city, it was just a country town.
Mm-hmm.
And they lived on the edge of it. They built a nice house, and then he built a big shop and produced his honey and did the extracting, and people would come there and haul away trucks full of 60-pound cans of honey to South Bend and Chicago and places. Mostly bakers would buy his products then, or rolls and goodies for the grocery trade. But he lived a good life, and he was very good at it. He never got to college. He started with the bees, but he was a grade school kid, actually.
Oh, really?
When he was supposed to be out doing something in a bee yard, his dad had gone and find him propped on his elbow in front of a hive entrance, learning the processes of change, the bees coming and going in and out the entrance, and how they sort out who goes and who doesn't. He learned his beekeeping from a small boy just because he was interested, and they had a big woods on their farm, and he grew hay, alfalfa for feed for the cattle, and the alfalfa flour to make good honey, and so on and so. That's all he did all his life, and he was good at. But he had the increase of the way I wasted my life. Well, not necessarily all wasted, but somewhat. He read a lot. He was thought not an ignorant man, and he ended up doing a lot of beekeeper specialty meetings at colleges around the state and country on techniques for doing this and the habits of the colonies of bees and the timings you could boom from one side to another and how far was optimum. Just the mechanics of keeping up a lot of bees. He had usually 30 or 40 colonies at a site and rented wood somewhere next door to a big hayfield of clover for pastures for the bees. And that's where he got his honey. And he had a sense of humor. He was a good speaker, even if he didn't go to DuPont and join a fraternity. There's life without fraternities. And thank God he knew that. I didn't join a fraternity in DuPont.
Yeah.
In fact, I think they threw me out of one. I'm not sure. If they didn't, I wish they had. Yeah.
So when you were in the military, did you guys know anything about like the Holocaust or what was going on in Germany at the time?
Not much.
Not much. What do you remember hearing about it during the military and then after?
Not much. I mean, you did so much of exercises and night expeditions to birds are travel through terrain supposedly infested with barbed wire, so and not get yourself hung up on the fence. And you weren't reading the regional paper very much when you were training in the military. And so I didn't. And then very quickly, if you had a specialty needed, they diverted you into that. I got dumped into photo school real quick on the thing because I had some background in it. Mm-hmm. And photography, aerial photography was really more in the beginning stages of the First World War, because one, they had better cameras, and two, they had airplanes to fly them, and they got information. Every fighter pilot turned on gun cameras with the guns, and all that stuff had to be processed first, and that was on that end as the lab, and then expert gunner pilots evaluated it and derived their training points from actual combat photographs from the enemy, and it was a very specialized thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you said you were on a bomber and did some photography from it, right?
Oh, I've been on one of everything.
Yeah. Was that
actually crawls?
Yeah. Was that on a like a reconnaissance mission, or what was the circumstances of that?
Yeah, usually, when we first put GIs in Japan, this was a new terrain. Well, we didn't have troops on the ground in Japan until we had troops on the ground in Japan, and then they didn't have any pictures, any maps where roads were, or there was water available, streams, and room to have housing, build barracks for sizable troops if they were going to be serious about Japan, and they were and did. Mm-hmm. And so there was the sort of in any housekeeping was the theme of the time. At least it looked like that to me. And each base had a photo lab attached to it, and everybody who flew combat or reconnaissance thing used their air camera. There were cameras on each of the engines of the 4-engine bombers, and they ran film and came back and reprocessed the film and turned it back to the intelligence officers on the planes and the courses, and we were part of their information on what we needed to do and to get ready and survive after we thought we were ready, and so on. It was interesting. I saw then a lot of it involved Japan, a pretty rocky, mountainous place, and knowing the topography on if you needed to fly low enough to get a good detail with your pictures, how low could you go, where to do it without running into a big fat rock, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. The pilots appreciated getting advance word on where those things were. And it was that sort of service we were performing, along with photographing of promotion ceremonies for the generals to say get another star on their armament. I guess it was armament. You might find that you guys will promise I'll get it back, and you're that interested if you were to borrow one of those.
Is there a spot, like, can I buy these online or anything, do you know?
We can just print more, don't worry about it.
Really?
Yeah,
sure?
we can just print more. I need to actually put it up there eventually.
Okay.
Publish it more widely. It is pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is so
People need to hear this. Yeah.
It's the Forrest Gumps.
Yeah.
Well, she did more than shows. in the credits in that book. She's a good writer, Devin, and she's written more and better stuff. But just, we weren't all out taking pictures. Look at the back of the list of publications for both Pat and me. And we were scientists as well.
In the back here?
Yeah, there was that. So, well, we get to the first of them because there's 2 or 3 pages that spent Pat wrote a lot more than I did. Those are all published science papers. Some of Pat, some of me. We weren't just tourists.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of trouble crossing lines and changing universities. I had enough. I could justify that I could do something, that people had found useful.
Wow.
I guess they did. At least I got a lot of these kinds of mentors. She wrote a lot more. She just died about 3 weeks ago, poor lady.
Oh, that's too bad. How old was she?
She was, God, why can't I remember? She was several years after the dying, maybe 8 or 10 years younger than I. But she taught, after she got done with some of this nonsense, she taught at the University of Wisconsin all her life. She was quite cherished and honored nationally and so on. She got into I can't even pull up the names anymore, but the futurist crowd, and she was even president of the National Futurist Society 1 year and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
She was way ahead of the rest of us. She drank a little at the parties. There were a lot of them, and fell downstairs and broke both legs in the fall, and never walked again until about 40 years of her life.
Oh.
Did all this in a wheelchair as a professor at Wisconsin. She didn't quit.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
She was a bright lady. Whether you'll see it, I don't know whether it's, I think it's in there, not here. The prize picture here is the one by the clock.
The clock?
That's me and my busy occupation on the farm. I was holding the roosters for Thanksgiving dinner.
Okay. Yeah.
That was my chief accomplishment. But Sue did a lot. We all grew up as farm kids. My grandparents had lived on a farm, lived on it all their life and died there. And that's why Dad had the location to, well, first they had to deal with bees in their fields, and then he took to it. That's why he became he would not have become a beekeeper as a garage mechanic. You could say it that way, yeah.
Yeah.
And he was a good beekeeper. He became, he'd go to university, beekeeper societies, meetings, and give talks to the groups and so on. He was a pretty polished man. We never went to a day of college. He was a beekeeper.
Yeah.
He could have done other things, but he loved them.
That's cool.
And he taught me a lot, that's why.
So, do you remember, this might be a stretch, but do you remember any stories that people who were older when you were younger told you? Like, did you ever do something like we're doing now?
Oh, gosh, I never thought of it from that point of view. What I must have, because in fact, I got hated by a lot of people, backyard beekeepers. I was the guy, a while when I worked for states, and I had to work for somebody to eat. I'd call on them and say, I'm so-and-so from the state the beekeeping department, I need to look at your bees and check for disease and so on. And, well, I don't know about me and so on. And then I find a case of foul mood and say, I'm sorry, but you dig a little hole and we'll set the bee there and throw a little gasoline and over their colony. Well, that didn't always go down too well. And so I had a mixed relationship with the field customer. But the guys who said, realized that if they let the thing carry on and they had 3 more colleagues, I'd be back a year or so to murder them too. And so we got along.
Like, did your grandparents ever tell you stories that you remember or anything like that?
They liked to fish.
Okay.
My grandmother had my granddad was a very small type little man, a farmer, and he never learned to drive. And he loved to fish, and she loved to fish, and they both loved to eat fish. And so I have a brother 2 or 3 years younger than I, and he never got interested much in books, but he is a good mechanic. They're useful too. And so he and my grandmother were great buddies to keep her Model T Ford running, and she had a trailer hitch on the Model T Ford, and they bought a little boat, and she towed the boat to Shoal Lake or whichever was where they were fighting good then. She and Granddaddy went out and they catch a bunch of fish, and that was her recreation, and a lot of their food too. And so I don't know how to qualify and answer your question. It was a part of harvesting the available food from the land, just like they harvested the wheat in the wheat field.
Yeah.
Always go get some fish. We're hungry for some fish. I'll hook it up, we'll go up to Shore Lake. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a very large Amish church was built on the Shore Lake shore. And Amish church people are very religious people, and the attendance on Sunday was great. There used to be so many buggies and horses at church, at an Amish church, you couldn't park your car to get your boat in the water. You know, these were the environmental problems of that time. That sort of thing. Yeah, we got home once or twice, and the local farmers were the schoolyard left off. They were not welcoming farmers on their land, very good. Even though they were all religious church goers, they didn't like to see it in their party life. I lived a weird life.
Yeah. I just love hearing these stories. So, like, if you're worried about boring me, don't let me.
Well, yeah, don't let me bore you to death all this.
I'm not bored.
This must be pure foolishness. Meanwhile, I was doing 2 other things. One of them, principally, my true love, other than the ones I married, was music. And my mother she was a school teacher in Worcester, Ohio. She'd gone to Worcester College as a girl, married dad. At any rate, she pushed the educational side of music was going to be the avenue. So we all took piano lessons, and I didn't like that. And there was an institution that at a lake, Shore Lake, or not Shore Lake, Oliver Lake, 6 miles south of the little town of Grange. And a man who was a band director at some schools in Ohio, Jack Wainwright was his name, and he bought a farm on the east shore of Shore Lake, and then started a band camp for training high school band students in the summertime with boating and swimming at the lake. It was a nice lake and all that sort of thing. And they lived there in the summer. So the answer to make me a musician, not a mere sticky-fingered beekeeper, was to take music lessons. And so I got set out, and the instrument they needed, instruments for orchestra, are supplied it on the needs of the orchestra, not the loves of the students. Or at least they were then. And I was started to become a cellist. And I was not a great cellist. I scored a great loss, or it might have been, and I don't think of it much as that, as a result of my lack of skill. And in the end, I had them, I think they still do, each spring they have music contests in several of the instruments, pianos, cellos, violins, trumpets, students in the high schools and colleges. And they were playing, the winner in each instrument's contest got a free year scholarship in the music school in Bloomington. Well, I won that my second year. And about 3 weeks before the semester opened in Bloomington, my father got a letter from the director of the music school at Bloomington. And it was a paragraph very congratulatory, saying, well, you hope your son does well, he does well as a cellist. The garbage would. However, circumstances are written. Long after the contest that you won, came a girl, a young lady, who played at a concert, played the cello, and she was just phenomenal. She was just great. He didn't put this in words, but the words were there far better than you were when you played. That was implicit in this. Okay. So we're very sorry. Father, wouldn't it possibly possible for you to raise enough money that your son could also come to the music school? And if you could pay the $45 a semester or whatever the big fee was in those days. And my father chose not to do that. He wasn't a great cello fan. And I didn't do that. I took piano lessons. But at any rate, I got started on the cello, and my mother was a social climber, having been a poor school teacher her whole career. And I don't know where I was going with that. She did go ahead, and we sold, we had 3 acres and we gardened and sold asparagus and all that. And she got enough money to pay for cello lessons, and she was insistent that I take them and made opportunities to play for the Ladies' Aid and whatever she could foresee. She would over everybody, she did. And but when I got to college, I got some professional lessons, and I wasn't too bad. And I came to love the cello, and still do. And I got better at music, in cello music. And so I did that through high school and college, and well, everywhere I went, I played in the city orchestra. Yeah. Not in the front row, I was in the back row. I never got good, but if you're with 8 cellos, you can vary a lot of balls in the section. Press lightly on the hard notes, you know. Anyway, that's how I got into the cello. And then my little sister kind of paid attention to what Big Brother did a lot when she was a little girl and wanted to she had to do was play the cello, and she did. And there are just pictures maybe the last picture that deals with my sister. She gave recitals, and she also played the piano well, and there's a picture in there. She gave a recital when she graduated from high school. The first half was a piano, the second half was a cello, and she was very good with both. I don't know whether you get it. If you promised that I could have it back, and you have enough interest, you wanted to borrow that, a copy of that.
Yeah.
But I only have those two. I'm going to have to order some. I hope I can still get it. But because I owe it, I bought a degree of clothing, I think, just for Ellie's family. And some universities or music departments that wanted some. Would you find them that one? Is that
I have this one. It's Kristen, David, and Scott.
No, there's one in there of Pat with her cellos twice.
What chapter would that have been in?
And that should be it. Maybe I can find it.
Chapter 11, chapter 12?
I haven't read this book yet. That was my prophet of law. That was my sister's 3 children, and this is one of the little earth folks talking about. I'll send you take one of these old ones, promise. Don't let the dog chew it before.
Oh, well. I don't even
I only have the 2.
You have a cat that might.
I do have a cat though.
You will see it if you, and don't let me force anything you aren't interested in.
I'm interested in all of it.
And I don't know what you're going to do with it, but there are a lot of extinct stories tied to this meandering route through nothing to at least a little, and that's the road I walk. I'm not famous. I didn't do anything. My mother was aggressive about recognition, and I got pushed into doing more than I wanted to. But I detested a bunch of them. I don't like to play instruments. Basketball was strong high school. And you have to play cello. Well, anyway, I won't bother to find that, but if you do take this,
I'll look for it.
Look, you'll see Pat, and wearing formal skirt and all that stuff. And she played her final high school appearance, and as a recital program. One half was played on the piano, the second half was played on the cello. She was that good, and she was good. And she was good until she fell down the stairs. And she's been good since. And she was a good part of this, obviously. And I tried to cover the whole family. I don't have as much about my parents as I wish I had. But, well, anyway, why I blather on. Stop when you're bored or tears. I want to jump to another part of the world.
So you photographed over Japan. You did photograph over Japan, but you mentioned something about London too. Did you photograph in like the European theater as well, or just
no?
Okay.
I did go to a lot. London is lousy with concerts and musicians. There was in wartime. And every weekend there were a lot of days anyway. There were British artists giving recitals or orchestral concerts and good musicians and pros.
Yeah.
And what this stuff, all this was the little stuff that happened in small towns in Indiana, and they didn't make many records that sell by the thousands. Well, doesn't it always bore the heck out of you? I just blundered along doing what came along, and
the thing about it is, like, there are so few people that have left alive that have lived through what you have. So I'm just fascinated to hear about all of it. You know, like this is going to be forgotten.
Oh, it's gone now. It's all gone.
Yeah. What weapons did you have? What was like your standard issue gear? Like in the military, like what was your? What did you have to like carry around with you? I mean, I guess you mostly spent time on the base and stuff, really.
Well, I haven't got a context of setting here. Carried around to do what? I was going to shoot somebody. I carried a rifle. It was
yeah.
But I didn't get to do that often.
So yeah, I guess my question
I carried the cello with me.
Cello?
Yeah, I have. I know it there, but I can't play anymore. I had an accident, beekeeping accident. I had a few colonies of bees out here in the west, and the bees stick their combs together with a dead glue. They make something called propolis, and I was cleaning old cells out of some extracted combs, and I couldn't get the last of the honey out, and I was destroying the wax and melting it down, start over anyway, and I reached in there with my fingers and pushed in those wax cells. This was one mother, and I got a coating of that wax on the 3 fingers of my right hand, the bow hand, and I've never gotten it off.
Oh, really?
These 3 fingers, if I pick up a knife, it's more apt to slip through and drop from these 3 fingers than not. Now I can't hold a bow because I tried to get the last honey out of a comb, and I haven't played cello since.
Huh.
And that's an accident that doesn't happen to a lot.
Yeah, that's weird.
I'm an oddball all the way around.
You can't predict stuff like that happening either.
I am a lousy driver too. I didn't drive much, and my brother was very helpful. He would correct me loudly and clearly at every slight mistake I made. I didn't like to drive. I wouldn't drive if I could help it. I'm an eccentric. I don't ever represent me as a standard high school kid of the times. I was everything else.
Did you ever have a car?
Oh, later on I did. I had to have the first Indiana, or at least our part of Indiana, down in Fort Wayne counties and farming. They all had church. Religion was a very strong thing with the early settlers, and they had religion. And back in the horse and buggy days, even, and I'm not talking about Amish here, although the Amish predominated finally, and this was an Amish area, and they did this more than anybody else. But pre the big Amish population, this is rude if we used to do this, the whites also celebrated Christmas, and they had big parking lots for the horses on Sunday for church service.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of stuff with horses. I don't know where I was going with this, but horses were popular, and my brother was good with them and good with harness and all that. He's a mechanic, no question. But I never got good at any of that, and he was part of it because he'd look over every time I'd put a nut on a bolt, and you use a left hand or what, that sort of stuff. I was steered both by my mother and the criticism from a few others, including my brother, of manual progress. I proved to be eccentric. with a cello bowl, and this didn't make me the most popular guy in town, and that was about my least concern.
Yeah.
Do I paint a picture? I was not kidding. I didn't hate music or anything. And my kid sister, I mixed up all the relatives. I had so many at one stage. We were so busy. But Pat, she's my granddaughter, I guess, in the succession. I could look it out or find it. But she admired me, and she admired the cello, and she asked if she could take cello lessons, and did. And she's very adept, and played a lot as a high school student and things.
Yeah.
They play it. And then when she went to Indiana, which she did later, she took lessons here and played in the Bloomington Civic Orchestra. She and I were a chair pair for several years in the town city municipal orchestra. We were the last, I think there were 8 chairs, or 8 people, 4 chairs of cellos, and I think we occupied the 7th and 8th, but we were there.
Yeah.
And so I played all through college, or all the time I was here. Oh, well, did that at DePaul too. I've got some pictures. I'm a hack musician. I love it. And
Yeah.
it meant a lot in my life, and it's been big with the family.
I'm kind of the same way. Like, I play bagpipes.
Bagpipes?
Yeah.
How'd you get to bagpipes?
Well, I don't really know. I always saw them parade around in like the 4th of July parades and stuff, and I was really interested and started taking lessons when I was like 9 years old, and just ever since.
Yeah.
So maybe I can play them later for you. But yeah. So you were born in 1921. Do you remember anything about like the Great Depression era? You've been really, really little then.
Oh, I remember a lot about it.
Yeah, what do you remember?
You never got a new shirt or anything, for one thing. We wore clothes until they were transparent, and practically. And everybody worked harder. I mean, the 8-hour work and go home and forget it didn't exist. You worked while it was daylight, you know, and whatever. Even in the job, if you were getting a little pay for working for somebody else, you worked just as long as they wanted you. Tower didn't count. The daylight counted. We got to get this done. Or if you were lucky, $1 a day you counted.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
How much was considered a lot back then? Like to make, how much money was considered a lot to make in a day? And like during the Great Depression? I don't know. Like you said, $1 a day would be lucky.
Well, I'm talking about kids, and if you're going to hire the town busy labor man to chop wood for you, $1 a day was a standard wage. It was
Okay.
almost without any job that didn't require specialized skill was cheap.
Okay. Yeah. And what would $1 buy you? Like, what was the buying power?
Well, a lot of liquor, but not in my house.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty fascinating.
We ate well because we had a 5-acre lot that Dad built the house on, soil was good, and we had enormous gardens, and that was the kids' role. And the folks bought little cultivators that we breed the harnesses for, and one would be the horse and the other thing, and we grew sweet corn and beans and cabbages, the vegetable spectrum in quantity, and the kids were the horses and diggers. And then we had to go out on weekends and eat after school and sell vegetables, and that's how we got, or my mother managed money to go get us a new shirt at school time in the fall and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The honey wasn't selling well yet. It was just coming on the market in the fall when the strike got there, but people were shopping yet, and nobody had any money in those days. To buy a pair of shoes was a major investment. You studied to see whether they might last 5 years, you know.
Yeah.
It was a good life, a better life in many ways. A lot of the trivia and chaff got filtered out on economic grounds. Some good things do too. Not every kid got to take cello lessons at the price of the menu at dinner time, and I did. And nothing I appreciated all the time.
Yeah.
But it was a different, my mother as a teacher, and a poor teacher, there were 4 girls in her family, and either by death or divorce, their father and their mother were divorced. Her mother lived in Worcester, Ohio. She grew up in a college town, and with her big house took in student boarders, and that's how she made a living. And her goal, and my mother carried it on, and that's why I took my music lessons at the end of a small whip, and sometimes it was not my first lust in life to learn to play the cello. It is now, but it wasn't when she thought of it.
Yeah.
And I don't make fun of her. She was right, and I'm better off for it. But it wasn't a lot of fun. Yeah. It's a hard instrument, and it sounds terrible, badly played. When I play it, it sounds good, or bad. No, I lost a concert, lost the contest for a scholarship at the very last minute when somebody came along with some pretty girl aged me. I never met her. I never went back to that teacher who took her. There's all this more you are.
No, I like it. So I'm trying to think of other historical events.
Yeah.
So what about like the 60s? What was your experience then? That's something people talk about a lot.
60s? Where in God's name was I in the 60s?
The Vietnam protests or stuff?
I must have been at the lower end of the college teaching circuit in the 60s, in my late 30s or 40s or something. I'm not exactly sure, but jobs were hard to get. The payday thing in those days, I know. But good jobs. Well, I was lucky, and maybe it's because not everybody yearns to play cello. There are openings to fill out orchestra. You find people who will furnish some lessons or pay for some lessons in order to complete the orchestra if they want their name on the donor program. You know how human ego works and this sort of thing. And it works real hard for people to solicit contributions to be publicly known. And I went that whole thing in various forms. I got thrown out of some things too. Can't remember who. Surely not why I should have been, but it happened. But is college and growing up at that stage in your life harder or more routine or boring or so on these days when everything's pretty well done over and cut and dry, and is there's not much surprise in going through the years from 16 to 26, is there?
Not really. Like, I've certainly grown as a person, and I know that much, but I don't think it's to the extent, like, you know, all of a sudden we get drafted and have to go help out this war effort or something like that. Like, it is pretty stable, and in my life especially, I don't know about yours, but it's been fairly stable, and I've been really lucky.
Yeah.
You have anything to say about
I think
that?
so. Yeah, like I said, it was pretty stable as well. You know, like when I gone to college, just went to college last year, started college in my freshman year, and you know, I liked it. And I liked last semester even more than I did the first. And you know, it wasn't. I thought it was really going to be this big change, and it was going to be this big different direction in my life. I didn't find it that different. I just thought it was, you know, just a new thing that I'm doing that I like, and also, and you know, when I turned 18 last year, I still do not feel like an adult. I feel like I'm 16 or 15.
Well, maybe you are. I don't know.
Yeah, at heart I am.
No, especially the farm kids in my time, they were all wearing jeans to school. Nobody had any clothes, and then some of the town kids had historical books, and they were different. You know, that kind of thing shown right through the grades when you were in school.
Yeah. So it was like kind of a social division.
Yeah.
Too.
Since we were told to get home quickly so we could go weed the asparagus, we didn't have much of it after school life.
Yeah.
And I couldn't play baseball, and I didn't want to because I didn't want to run down my fingers. I did it with glue.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wish I could take it. That more interesting for you. What are you going to do with this?
I'm just here to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Really.
Well,
Just to preserve it.
ask
preserve
away,
its
Abby. You
stories.
won't find many as weird as I am. I guarantee it.
Yeah, I certainly haven't heard anything else. Yeah.
But I would not change that. I would have at the time, and all the time. God, how did I get trapped into this? Everybody else is having some fun. One thing is, for all of my affinity with music, I never learned to dance. I have very little skill in the rhythmic part of music. And I think that was teaching a lot because the music teacher, she was a good piano player, but when you start playing for her, you'd be there with a stick beat on the bench or something. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. You learn that's the way to keep track of things. I learned to be a pretty mechanical player. It took a while to realize that it's a special touch to play that C at the end of the sentence.
Yeah.
A little longer than normally would be played if you just killed the hero, you know, in the music. More little.
I guess one of my last questions, I'm sure I'll think of like 100 once I leave, but what is some advice you have, like life advice?
Don't quit growing at 6 feet.
What was that? What'd you say?
I said, do not get growing yourself. Don't get larger, taller at anything less than about 6 feet. You beat that rap a mile. But I'm 6 feet tall. Ever meet a pretty girl you like to ask for a date? She's 6'7" and looking down at you. Well, I'll revisit that.
Yeah.
No, that's true. You're a midget. Come on. Especially as time is going on and the population's better fed and grows up. The basketball players are monsters these days in terms of height. And me try out for a basketball team, I'd get run over by the feet. Yeah. I don't know, that's trivial, but it isn't trivial. You're a midget among the giants as a small kid.
You know, I remember you were giving me some advice, I think about a year ago, I think it was about a year ago. Because I've been telling you that I was going to college, and I was saying that I was interested in chemistry. And I remember you had told me, you know, if you come up with anything, you know, that a new idea or a new kind of, it could be some kind of new invention, don't get too attached to it, because it'll be soon outdated by, whoever invents something next.
That's probably some good advice.
Well, that's true. It's arisen again that among the best and most skillful scientists and others among us, that we won't need to know even the language of certain fields. That we put three things in a machine and push a button and we get the new combination out without thinking. You know how the technologists are saying we can think for you very shortly. Or maybe you don't run into that. You haven't gotten far enough in that.
A little bit.
The educational world or the research world yet. You're headed there, I presume. Hey, look who's... I don't know. I've been talking, but I don't know whether I've said anything in all the time you've been.
You said a lot of really good stuff. Yeah. Do you have any regrets?
And right here is the best and longest one. So, it's my home now. They have a funny law in this state that I think 75 is the cutoff age. You can't live alone.
Oh, really?
Right.
Huh.
Don't want people dying on the kitchen floor and not being found for a week because they had a stroke. You know, there's some reasoning in it, but it's the people who rent out to sleep over with you in the house, that is, get about $8 an hour, and just daycare and housekeeping is far less than that. And this is we would have figured it subterfuge, I suspect, but one of the pressing reasons I live with Sue is beyond caring, and because she's special in many ways, is the fact that the care people is like driving. You can't, they set a driving age, and that makes some sense, because accidents in cars are a different thing than slipping on the kitchen floor, which I set a record at, by the way. You put varnish on these floors?
No, it's a plastic floor. He pulled the refrigerator over on himself a few weeks ago. That was exciting. You wouldn't even think you could do that. There's a dent on the side to prove it. He was saved by the peninsula.
So I opened both doors.
And leaned.
One hinge is on this side and the other on the other. They both had tray racks on them that were full bottles of this, that, and the other thing. I pulled them out and very gradually, each one collected in one hand on either side of the angle to the base, the center of the tin, And I ended up, it pushed my chair over on my back on the floor, and the doors came down on the floor, too heavy to move, full of ketchup, and I would have been, I expected to be there, nobody in the house, nobody around, and I expected to be there an hour or two. I couldn't move it, there was nothing I could do about it. The other things, you very quickly had one side behind this bridge here, I couldn't push. And some the cover blocked it on the other side. And that weighs a lot of money when you get all the stuff on refrigerator doors, glass bottles and full of vinegar, and God knows nothing broke on it. I didn't get flavored myself in the process. But there I was, and fortunately somebody came in about 15 minutes, but I was deciding whether I could pull together enough to have a little lunch. I was reach the bottles I needed, and then all the rest of it.
Oh.
But I got up again. But I mentioned this before. I have been kind of hasty and impulsive in my movements sometimes. I don't follow along all the time, only now that I'm 100 years old. That's all I know. But if I turn and I wear rubber-soled shoes that are good for walking. I do quite a lot of walking in my special walk. I'll show you that outside. But at any rate, and I change my mind a lot. So I do a right angle turn, and the turning foot with a rubber sole on a new shiny slippery floor. Yep. I did that 7 straight days in this house before I got smart enough to slow down when it's time to turn the corner. I'd always be in a hurry. And so and I survived. I fell on things, handles on cupboards that came down at you and you cut a groove across your arm, and things you had never expected to meet personally, you know.
Yeah.
That was not my most exciting. Well, it was pretty exciting, but not my most fun experience.
Yeah.
Sue wasn't around to rescue me. But
I was around.
well,
You needed to bang on some pots and pans. It was exciting and frightening. It's got wheels on it, you wouldn't think. Yep, he's got 9 lives. I think we've used up 8.
Yeah.
Told her she had too many wine bottles in the door. Not true, was it, Steve? We don't drink much around here.
But you drove until you were 97, Dad. Do you remember that? You
What?
drove until you were 97.
I did what?
You drove your Subaru until you were 97.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't think you hit the age limit yet.
Well, they got more cops now. I've been stopped quite a lot, actually, just
Oh, yeah?
driving, and I don't know why. I'm not for a violation. I've got 1 ticket, and I did make 1 mistake. Didn't have to go to jail.
That's nice. Yeah. What are the officers' reactions when they see that it's like a 97-year-old driving around?
The man that got me and gave me the ticket because of the literal factual violation of the rule between driving up to 75 and beyond, that's a no-no. He stopped me and I got out and proved I was too old. He couldn't not write me a ticket, but it didn't amount to it. I paid $15, I think. It wasn't the last ticket in the list that can be from driving at all. I've never had another one and all that. He was a little surprised, I guess, but actually, Sue was, and he still that. Yeah, she had to put the pitch in and lift, didn't it? So we had four people picking up doors and pushing that way to get my tail folded back up.
Yeah.
What other crazy things happened to me? Well, never made a basketball team because I was too short, which is a good thing because basketball players waste a lot of time. These basketball players that aren't going to make the varsity at IU or anywhere. And so they waste their time perfecting skills that, like my cello skills, they are not marketable. What do you guys do that are different than you thought you would be doing at your age?
Bagpipes is definitely one. I don't know. I've never really had a whole lot of massive plans for the future of what I do. Like, I didn't know if I'd be doing college or not, like going to university.
What was your major in?
It's going to be history. A history major. So,
Is there a lot of job opportunities from that?
I don't really know. Like, it's mostly teachers and stuff. I'm mostly just following it because it's what I'm interested in. And it's what I enjoy, so I'll probably find something to use out of it.
He did history too. It just wasn't human history as it turned out, but you were a history major in geology, Dad. The history of the Earth.
Well, we dignified geology is a term. No, I like history. I represent it now.
Yeah.
Can't not like it. I'm there.
Yeah.
Yeah, this recording is a piece of history now, yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
So, the oldest person currently alive is 116 years old. Do you think you have a chance of beating that?
I hope not.
Heard that before.
Well, I have another condition. I hadn't told you, but hadn't planned to, but I will. There is a degenerative visual condition that can affect one eye at a time. A deterioration of one layer of the eyeball itself. I can't give you the scientific name.
Yeah.
The eye people run and hide when you even mention it or do what I have done, and that is exhibit it. And I'm well through halfway a process of being blind in my right eye.
Mm-hmm.
I can't read anymore at all. There's a loss in my life. I cannot read a book.
You're doing better than most people born when you were. I think most people are 6 feet underground by now. So.
But 6 feet underground.
They're buried.
Oh, a bat, maybe?
Yeah, like they're dead. They've been buried.
Yeah, well.
So, I mean, if that's all you have, then you seem to be doing pretty good.
Well, it was always easy for me to strike up an argument with anybody. And I don't need back to argue. So who reads? Why read? Make it up as you go.
You have a lot of young friends, Dad, though.
Yeah.
A lot of young friends. That helps when you get old.
Yeah.
A lot of young friends.
I
Great.
had one call on us just the other day.
Yeah, the Kentucky State beekeeper drove up to visit with him for a couple hours, so that was fun. And he helped her with some books she wrote.
Oh, I wish I'd met her earlier. She's a nice kid, bright kid. She shows how people's attitudes can be warped by colleges. She's a Kentuckian, went to University of Kentucky, graduated, and after graduation took 2 weeks off, went to her grandfather's farm in Kentucky for a little rest and look, and said, I don't want to be a farmer or anything connected with agriculture. Well, it's something connected, but I love my grandfather's bees. And now she's the state expert on bee culture and how they harvest and going out in counties and helping people make little collectives, get the money to buy an extractor so they can harvest their bees and put it in a can and eat it in the wintertime. Oh, she's the state beekeeper. It has been, she's in her 50s now, and this has been her career. And she never went back to.
Well, she became an English professor. That's that kind of interesting
Well,
switch.
that too.
Yeah, she was an English professor, so that was quite a switch from being a professor to quitting and becoming a beekeeper. And kind of being at the top of the field too. So
she's pretty good. She wrote a real good book.
yeah, she wrote a book on the history of bees in America. Actually, it's a huge history book for her PhD.
What's that?
Bees in America was
Oh,
Tammy's.
that. Oh, that.
Yeah, he read the book and liked it so much he wrote her a note saying, "I love your book," and she says wanted to come meet him. So because of his father was one of the first migratory beekeepers, so that was an important part of it. Before they started doing semi-trucks, they had the old Ford truck. You helped your dad move beehives all summer. That's in what kind of truck did your dad have?
Oh, he had a half-ton Chevy truck, and we move about 30 colonies at a time. But you'd wait in the bee yard until it was dark, till everybody was in, then you could put it on the screens and close them in, and then the work of picking up the yard and loading the bees and making sure. Then everybody was tired. He usually got a couple of guys to help, and I was one of them usually. My brother evaded all this stuff. He was a mechanic. And so I went along and I drove the truck of bees up.
Oh!
Hi, man. Do we admit we know this guy too?
We want to hear the story.
Well, introduce him.
I wouldn't want to interrupt.
Oh, well, that's the mechanic in the valley.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
This man's, he's been a load. But at any rate, I'd drive the truck up to the new bee yard and pull over in the first light of dawn and get a nap. And then they'd catch up after their naps where I left them hours ago and fresh, and then we'd unload. But so I saw a lot of nocturnal beekeeping, and I didn't like it much. I don't like to drive, and I didn't like bees. They were interesting, but I mean, they don't easy with a great variety of talents. On the landing board, I gets a little bored.
Yeah, it just wasn't your passion. Well, if you will allow me to, I would love to borrow one of these.
Well, books. I'll give you one at a time. Well, they're the same. They aren't. Take one with you, borrow one.
Yeah.
But take care of it.
I will.
Yeah.
And yeah, I hope to see you sometime again.
Well, I hope you do right here, and others, because you got the interesting life too, I'm sure. I haven't heard about that.
Yeah, I'd love to share it sometime. Hopefully we'll have more time.
Well, educating.
Yeah.
All right now. Well, yeah. I mean, this has certainly been a different video that I've filmed so far. So yeah, I'm really looking to be seeing how this is going and what we're going to be talking about next time. All right then.
Well, give me some hints about areas that might be worth looking at, or bring them with you when you come next time.
Yeah, of course. I'll get some questions written down and stuff. So.
Yeah, well, anyway, as always, that's it for now. Don't fall too close, keep the faith, and don't take any wooden nickels.